something up there too about that movie, but I didn't.
Yes, that movie. Welcome, folks, to another Spoiler Room episode. It's been a little while, but tonight we've got another special 25th anniversary series episode going on, and we're going to be talking about Frankenstein Unbound, namely because it was Roger Corman's last directorial credit, and we're going to talk about Bad Girls from Mars, one of the many in the plethora of films that Fred Olen Ray has made in his career, and he's still making films today. And if you haven't heard it yet, check out our interview with Fred Olen Ray. He let me talk to him for about an hour, and it was a lot of fun, and we really got some interesting behind-the-scenes discussions about not only this film, but a couple other movies that Fred had done. And tonight in the room, we have another fantastic group of individuals here tonight. First off, we have Mr. Cole Meredith. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure. And the lovely diva of the Spoiler Room, Dawn. How are you tonight?
Just fine. How about yourself?
Oh, we're hanging in there, recovering from the world's largest trivia contest. So, and in the room, it would be a discussion about these two films without these two gentlemen. First, we have the lovely Andrew Shearer.
Oh, thank you for letting me be lovely on it. It's a Wednesday night. Lovely on a Wednesday.
and the other gentleman, of course, would be Mr. Scott Davis. Hello, sir.
But I'm not lovely to you?
You can be lovely.
What happened between us, man?
You got 2 minutes, and that's where you want to go.
We only got 2 hours for the podcast. That's where you want to go?
Yeah, you're just
getting a little too Diane Sawyer.
The lovely Diane Sawyer.
So, the first movie we're going to start off today is Mr. Fred Olen Ray's directed film, Bad Girls from Mars. Now, its credit is coming out in 1990, but then it had an official release in January of 91, but it's close enough to 1990, so we're covering it because it's Fred Olen Ray, and it's a very interesting film. From the description off of IMDb, someone is killing off the female leads of a movie production of Bad Girls from Mars. And the producers feel they should try to finish the film, even though they're making a lucrative amount of money on the insurance. So they hire an international sex bomb, Emmanuelle, to star as the lead. And she immediately starts embarrassing everybody as the mystery continues and the killings keep happening. Okay, Bad Girls from Mars. Let's start right away. Dawn. What did you think? What are your initial impressions with Bad Girls from Mars?
Oh, great. You had to start with me.
I did.
I probably am the least invested in this movie of this entire group.
That's why I wanted to start with you. So I usually end with you. So
yeah. It was hugely entertaining. Hugely entertaining. But I didn't, I don't know. It didn't flip my switch.
Sure.
Which is really weird because, this movie is exactly right up my alley with everything that I find entertaining. But maybe I wasn't in the right mood. I don't know. I loved I really loved Edie Williams in this.
Yes.
She was brilliant.
Well, you had a whole cast of. It actually surprised me who showed up in this film. Edie Williams. You got Brink Stevens in here, but you also have our favorite person from the Witchcraft movie, Vice Academy movies, and Witchcraft 2 is in here as well, Mr. Jay Richardson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Who at one point is rocking his pipe again?
He's rocking the pipe. You liked Edie Williams. Was there any particular thing that stood out for you that you really liked besides Edie Williams' performance, Dawn?
She was just so oblivious to anything, and she just kind of went on her way doing whatever the hell she wanted, and consequences be damned. I'm not sure if she was written that way or if that was just a brilliant piece she brought to the character, but I just absolutely loved it.
She definitely stands out. What about you, Cole? Your initial kind of impression with Bad Girls from Mars?
Man, I laughed enough to make the hour and a half worthwhile, for sure. I thought it was a fun time. Yeah. I mean, pretty much everything you guys have said. Edie Williams and some of the other performances made me chuckle, and some of the gags were great. It was a fun flick, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's interesting because I thought it had a feel more of a 80s comedy more so than being 90s.
It definitely did. In fact, it's interesting you mentioned that because I watched our two movies tonight back to back, and then afterwards I thought, well, that's strange, and I went up and I looked into that movie a little bit, Bad Girls from Mars, and as you say, I was surprised that it was 90s because it really struck me as the type of thing that I would have rented from this little hole-in-the-wall video station called Party Port on Betamax way back in the day. It just had that sort of feel to it. But I did laugh, and I did laugh. I mean, I think that's the biggest compliment you can give to a movie like this probably is that it was entertaining,
It intended to be a comedy, so yeah, if you laughed, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Andrew, what about you, sir? When you first saw Bad Girls from Mars, your impression with it?
Oh, well, as somebody who is not only a fan of low-budget movies but also makes them, I love seeing a movie about the making of a low-budget movie, like done by the very people. They're basically making fun of what they do, They're obviously having a field day with it. But to throw a Russ Meyer star in there, Edie Williams at almost age 50, getting so naked constantly, and that's the way she was in real life too. And so to me, it was just like, combine that with the corny humor, the just and the sound effects of doing rim shots after a bad joke. I hate to say this, man, but if you could put my personality on screen, Bad Girls from Mars, pretty much it.
This is why I like you, Andrew.
There's really no. I mean, this is just. It's my life, basically. To be honest with you.
Sure.
Minus the murder, obviously.
Minus the murder, yes. Scott, what about you? Initial reaction, impression with Bad Girls from Mars?
Well, I have no idea why, because I've been aware of the movie for years, and I've looked up so many different Fred Olen Ray films. I don't know why I never actually watched the movie until like a couple nights ago.
Really?
I know. It's like, I mean, I even had the DVD here, the old Image or whatever DVD was, laying in the house. I'm like, I've never seen it. I picked it up. I threw it in there, and yeah, this is Fred, just how I like him. It's so weird because you did this great interview with Fred Olen Ray, and he said, well, why this movie? Not picking up on the anniversary thing immediately. Right. And it is kind of true because when people say Fred Olen Ray, Bad Girls from Mars is not the first movie they think of, or third, sixth, whatever. But maybe they should, because it's strange because Fred Olen Ray, now he is a guy who's got lots of talent. He has adapted himself to so many different things. He's done family films, he's done softcore films, he's done action films, he's done thrillers, he's done whatever you can imagine. He's done holiday pictures, and but the thing that I think everybody's always going to remember, more than is even as far as being Fred Olen Ray films, like those. Yeah, that's a Fred Olen Ray film. Oddly enough, are all these films which usually were done on super low budgets, very tight, like less than a week schedules. I think Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers was a few days. This was 5 days. Evil Toons was like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, I love Evil Toons. Dude, I've seen Evil Toons so much.
Evil Toons is my favorite of his, actually.
Love that movie.
And those are the ones that he's going to be known for. And what was great about this is that he was already sending himself up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was playing on his own experience.
Right.
For instance, when he comes in, and I think through his interview he said that was actually him doing it, and ripped out just pages of the script at random and said, "Now we're on schedule."
Yeah.
Well, that's something that Roger Corman used to do when a film was behind schedule. Said, "Yeah, we're 2 days behind schedule." Corman would actually pick up the script, tear out about 15, 20 pages of script and say, "Now you're back on schedule." That was what he'd do. I'm like, oh my gosh, they were running that. And so all these little things, and having the film not only shot by the great Gary Graver, but actually having Gary Graver show up in the movie, that's fantastic. I mean, it's I really had a great time with this movie. It was funny. It had a good spirit, and I had to chuckle at one point because, I mean, all I could think of was the Buzz Lightyear meme.
Oh, yeah.
And all I could think of was breasts as far as the eye can see. Because he's right. There is. I mean, even for one of his movies, there's a lot.
There is a copious amount of nudity in Bad Girls from Mars.
They had a 5-day schedule, very low budget. They used the cheapest and most classic special effect, which is sexuality.
Yeah. But what's interesting about it is there's actually no sex scenes in it. And he made a point of that. They made a point of it. Yes, there was nudity, but there's actually no on-screen. There's implied, but there's no on-screen sex scenes at all, which I thought was actually really cool.
Well, even the violence, even when they show body parts showing and stuff, the violence is so cartoonish as well.
Yeah.
Well, it might have sex and violence for that's definitely R-rated. But let's be honest, it's not like this is Friday the 13th or something like that.
No.
No, I was 14 when I saw this the first time, and it's perfect for a dude who's 14. That's the best movie ever.
Pause.
Yeah. Well, what got me with it too, though, was actually the quality that he shot it on, and he makes an interesting point about shooting on film. By shooting this on film, am I off on this, Dawn? I want to come back to you again on this because it looked as good as, say, the Police Academy films as far as quality of the image and the audio on it. Was it that much worse than Police Academy films or the Porky's comedies or those other 80s comedies? Was it?
That's fair. That's a fair statement, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what helps because I'm looking at this going, this looks really good for, I mean, I've watched it many times, but it's you could put the quality of this film up next to the films that they shot for the other comedies of the late 80s and I think it would you couldn't tell initially that it was low budget. Wouldn't you say, Cole?
It might have been something with the quality of the transfer that I watched.
Oh, okay.
But there was a particular amount of grain. I mean, obviously, I still laughed. I still, had an all right time. But I really probably shouldn't comment on the quality, as this was something I had to find online.
Oh, sure.
I'd never seen it, and video stations are the path where I am. So. Yeah, I think there's a lot of grain. I can still see the movie, but I can't really comment on the photography or anything along those lines. I can say it was funny, man. I was laughing for sure.
Yeah, the jokes really come at you those. I mean, everything really. It's really tough. That's why it's hard to date this film, I think, because it has all those 80s comedies elements in it. Now, special effects wise, who noticed the little bat symbols throughout the film?
It was great to find out what those were for after so many years. For in that interview you did, that was awesome trivia because there's no commentary on the DVD. I have the tape and the and the disc, and that's
Uh-huh.
it. What you did was that talk that Fred gave you on the interview. That's the most I ever found out about the making of this movie by far.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah, yeah, it was very interesting. For those of you who haven't listened to the interview, you should check it out. But let's just say there was a bat symbol on a door and a couple other props, and there's a good reason for it for the person they were trying to get for this film and the original title of the film. So check out the interview for that. I'm not going to spoil it here because I don't want to spoil my own interview. But we'll spoil we'll
Well,
spoil the film.
you'll spoil everything else.
Spoil everything else. But my
It's in
God.
the title of the show, but
Well, it
come on, guys, this is my shit now.
it sounds to me like if the movie had been what he originally intended it to be, it wouldn't have had half of the nudity that it did.
No,
So,
it
we can
wouldn't
all
have.
thank the guy for not doing.
It wouldn't have, yeah, but it's funny how he was talking about that. They did shoot this in 5 days, which is actually, if you look at the film, the way what was put together, it's impressive they shot this in 5 days.
That
Because,
is insane. Anybody
On
who's ever
35
shot
millimeter.
yeah,
I mean, 5 days? That's
5
nuts.
days with 35 millimeter film, and
That is
mean,
madness.
they've got
Madness, I tell you.
they've got multiple locations. They got, a number of costume changes, and he was saying they used his office for the office of the director, which makes sense because of the posters.
Yeah.
in the
They're all
back.
over rails, yeah.
Now the nudity. How did you think that the nudity was handled in this? It was there, but it really wasn't. I guess it's hard to say. I don't want to say it wasn't sexualized, but it wasn't really there in a seductive, get arousal sort of way. Was it more so than a
I don't
a
know.
comedic? No, more than a comedic. It was more used as a comedic tool, though, more than a. I got the impression it was used more as a comedic tool than it was for a some other, because of the scenes that it shows up in.
Yeah, well, they're making fun of what they do in their
Right.
business. They're making fun of the practices of low budget movies, or having
Mhm.
use nudity here, more nudity. Hey, to have this person come in and take their shot. I mean, there's a part where Edie is just talking to someone and her nipple is out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, or there's like wet T-shirt stuff going on, or the woman's like, hey, you want to use my top? I'm not using it, and she pops out. They're making fun of these movies
Oh, yeah.
with their own movie, and
Mhm.
also making it one of the best of those movies because of that.
Yeah, it is one of the earlier meta films before meta film was cool.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
and it's like like 4 or 5 years before Tim Burton did Ed Wood, and there's all this Plan 9 stuff in there, and a lot of jokes
Yeah.
about making low budget movies in it,
yeah.
similar to the humor Tim Burton had too. The group of people making the low budget cheesy movie.
What'd you think? What'd you think of all the low budget film references, Don, in the film?
Oh,
Did
I
you
thought
catch them?
I thought it was great, but I wanted to go back to the nudity part.
Okay, sure.
Yay!
No, go ahead. I was hoping you would.
So one of the things that I really liked about it was, you're right, it was not a whole lot of sexualized, objectifying nudity. I recently read an article, or maybe it was a comic, they all kind of blur together after a while, about the difference between nudity as being objectifying versus nudity as being empowering.
Mhm.
And
I read that too.
it was,
It's a little like pink and gray comic, right? It is
yeah,
a
there you
comic.
go.
I read
And it is very clear that in this movie, the nudity is the power of the nudity is all in the hands of the women.
Mhm.
As, hey, look at me, I can do this. I am not ashamed of myself. This is my body. I am using it to for the gifts I have,
Mhm.
rather than being a tool of somebody else, being used
Right.
by somebody
It's-
else, or for the whatever. I
It's so
really
excessive. It
appreciate
seems to
that.
be freaking the men out when the nudity
Exactly.
happens.
Exactly.
It's always making them really uncomfortable, and that's so great.
And the women were all excessively confident, and I
Mhm.
loved it.
Now that you mention it, Dawn, I'm thinking back to this movie, and a lot of the nude scenes were there was nothing where a woman was of course there's no like rape or anything that you're going to get in a lot of films like say from the 70s and stuff, and there's not a lot of women being taken advantage of. Usually they are in control, even on whether it's on the film set of Bad Girls Go to Mars or Bad Girls from Mars, sorry, or like when they're trying to instigate like sexual favors, or they are the ones
always
in charge.
in power. Yeah.
That's
Well,
a
it's
good
the way
point.
that Russ Meyer's the way the women were in his movies were a lot like this, and I can't help but think Edie Williams had an influence on that because she was married to Russ for a while, and some would say that Super Vixens was written about her because it was because it happened when they were having their really awful divorce that they were going through, and if you're familiar with Super Vixens, some of the lines the women say I think are probably verbatim from phone calls and conversations he had with Edie, but she was just she was known as being just totally brazen. I mean, you can look at pictures of her now from Cannes Film Festival a couple of years ago. Boobs are out on the red carpet. She's just, you know what I mean? So fuck you if you don't like it. So I wonder if that, just her being on set, had an influence. I don't think Fred went, hey, could you, when you're in this scene, could you pull your nipple out? I'm sure it was out. It had to have been. And they just shot it,
Yeah, it's interesting because I think people would first look at this and go, oh, you're doing this, but Don, it makes a great point, I think, and it is true that especially even when there's a tanning oil scene, she's actually the one in control of that scene too. Thinking about it, I can't think of any scene where they're naked or they're whatever, and they're not in control. It's not initiated by them, and it scares the guys.
Yeah, I'm glad, Don. I'm glad you brought it up because the dudes they're so uncomfortable in these scenes, and it's awesome because you think about I was a kid when I was watching it, and I was just like seeing these dudes like, dude, if you were in the room, this fantasy that you would have if it was actually happening in front of you, you'd be like, holy crap.
Yeah.
What the hell is this? It's like too much, you know what I mean?
I still get scared.
It's great.
I'd be like, oh, what's going on here? Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Thank
great,
you,
But
but
it wasn't always the case in movies like this, and so that's one of the wonderful things about it. I'm glad it was brought up in the conversation because if I'd never seen this movie and I heard this discussion, I would so want to watch it. And we're not underselling it at all.
No,
it's really great. It's really great. And if anybody, you can find it in places online and stuff. I was watching my DVD of this, but I did also notice that as of the time we are recording this anyway, anybody who wants to watch it, it is available on Hulu Plus.
Yep,
that's
that's where I watched it.
It was
Hulu
on
Plus.
Netflix for a while, and I don't think it's on Netflix right now, but it is available on Hulu Plus. So.
Yeah, that's where I watched it too. And Cole, I want to just get your impression real quick. What'd you think of the topless wrestling scene? Those two actresses really seemed to be going at it. I mean, it looked a little. No.
They should have put mud in the floor.
I wanted to talk about just because the way it was. Some of those scenes, especially with the lower budget films. The actresses or whatnot, are kind of like, they're kind of, giggle, hot,
it's like a little slap fight.
You can tell they're trying not to laugh, but I don't think I saw two girls go at each other like this since, Vice Academy?
This is brutal, way worse than that.
Well, it was something else, I think it was perfect for this film, definitely. Definitely.
But it was also, I think, handled humorously, though. It wasn't. Oh, they're gonna wrestle. Oh, then they're gonna make out. No, they just.
Totally. In fact, ironically, I just watched for whatever reason. It was on Netflix, and I was tired last night, so I watched Naked Gun 2.5 or something.
Uh-huh.
And this reminded me a lot of that. In point of fact, the timing of the jokes and just the
Jamie
sort of
Richardson's a lot like Leslie
delivery.
Nielsen.
Mhm.
I mean, it's probably just because I saw them both within 24 hours. I'm making that comparison. It definitely, yeah, has that kind of. It's almost like a slapstick. Not quite in the same vein as Saturday the 14th, but
Yeah.
along those lines for people who haven't seen it. Sort of like Saturday the 14th meets Frankenhooker, kind of maybe.
Well,
Um,
it's silly on purpose.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's definitely
yeah.
not
I,
serious.
my favorite scene personally is the one where they're the extremely meta scene where they're talking about, yeah, and then if you get a conversation that just kind of lasts too long, you can always just throw in some TNA in it, and they cut to Brink Stevens, who's in lingerie with a whip, and she just smiles at the camera, hits the whip, and then they go back to the guys talking.
You know they had fun doing this, man. You know they
Oh
had a good
yeah.
time.
Well, that's the great thing is that and in the interview he says it basically came up as let's just do another movie because they had the long days and having the equipment. You hear a lot of stories about that on these film shoots and stuff. And well, of course, getting a movie together that quickly, what are you going to get together? You're going to get together your close friends, the
Hmm.
people you've worked with a lot in both cast and crew, and everybody was in on the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody knew exactly what they're like. Okay, Hollywood Boulevard, but our Hollywood Boulevard,
Yeah.
and it really, really worked. You could sense that they're making fun of themselves, that these things don't always turn out the way we want them to, but you know what, damn it, this is us. This is
It,
what we are.
it was playful fun though. It wasn't we're insulting. It was playful fun. It was
Oh
like
yeah.
you know
That's the great thing is that if you had first of all, if you had say like a major motion picture that was making a movie about low budget filmmaking, which there have been quite a few of, what's the tone it usually takes? It usually comes off as very condescending, very cheesy. The films that they're making often don't really resemble the films that most low budget filmmakers are making,
Or they're making you laugh at the shortcomings rather
or
than
at
trying
Right.
to celebrate
at their
those.
expense. And here
Yeah.
it was really of no, you're laughing with us,
Hmm.
thing, and it had a very it was a very even with all the murder and everything else, it was a very very positive film about low
I,
budget filmmaking, and I
I,
liked that a lot.
I'll tell you the other thing that surprised me among many things when I first watched this film, and again I've watched it many times, but looking at it more closely now for the show, uh, the breaking of the fourth wall was interesting because that doesn't happen too often back then, except for maybe the Zucker brother comedies. Did that surprise anyone, where they kind of actually broke the fourth wall a couple times?
It's like all bets are off, man. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're in this zone, I mean, to me, I think one of the funniest scenes, other than Edie, who is God, anytime she's in the scene, forget about it. She's the greatest. She reminded me of something like maybe out of a John Waters movie almost. But like the scene where Fred's robbing the convenience store, you know,
Yes.
and they
Hmm.
keep having these word plays and stuff like that. I mean, it's self-aware, but it's not trying to be. Oh, I don't know, man. It's not making fun of the movies, and it's not trying to be like I don't know. For a movie that was put together so quickly, that seems so genuinely hilarious.
Well, the way they roll it off too, they don't roll it off on you like, look, we're doing innuendo. Look.
Oh, no joke gets beaten into the ground. It rolls so well. It's like almost vaudevillian, that one.
Oh, come on. We've all, I think, seen comedies, especially modern comedies, where, look, we're doing innuendo. We're doing innuendo. We're funny. And this one, they rolled it off well. So, yeah, there's not a.
I think Seltzer and Freeberg have tried to make a career out of that. Ugh.
So,
So much better than one of those movies.
Oh
yeah.
God, yeah. No, this is if you're looking through cable movies late at night and you see Bad Girls from Mars, you jackpot if you watch this movie.
Yeah.
It's everything that you would hope it would be, and more more than you think it would be. I mean, the nudity in this movie is pretty excessive, and the humor in it is really silly. I mean, it never lets up. It's
Mhm.
fantastic. I was I hadn't watched it in years, and I'm so glad you picked it. So I checked it out. I'm like, I'm watching it with my wife every time she walks by. It's just like, there's Edie's, and she's obviously used to seeing that here, but sometimes in person when we're making a movie in the house. But like, it's like, well, damn, this movie's the real deal. Like, I know, right? It's so good.
I definitely, it is definitely one of those I'd recommend to people, for a fun, as long as you're not offended by nudity, but the way it's handled in here is not what you expect from a film like this, and the fact that everybody you could tell is having fun, and let's just face it, Jay Richardson, if he couldn't embody or channel Steve Guttenberg from Police Academy anymore.
He's like Gutenberg and Leslie Nielsen and Bruce Campbell, like all rolled into one. I mean, Jay Richardson he's so funny. He's really funny.
But before I do want to get to the other film, but before we get there, I do want to talk about, though, just real quick, the officer, the cop, Al. Now I was talking to when I talked to Ray on that. He's only credited under that name when he appeared in there in 2 films, but he's been in a ton of films. I'm trying to remember his real name, but he's credited as Bob Ruth in this one and one other Fred Olen.
He looks really familiar, like he has one of those faces.
He does. He's been in a lot of films. Did you, Don? Did you recognize him at all? The cop, or did
No, sorry.
No. Oh, see, I've Cole or Scott.
Names
I didn't, man. I didn't. My apologies, brother.
No, it's okay. It's just I swear I've seen the guy's face.
Well, here we go. I've got him. He's, you know what? This is gonna kill us. He's credited as Bob Ruth in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, he's credited Robert Ruth. Yeah, and this dude, look at this. He's got lots of Fred Olen Ray films. He's also had a recurring role on Everybody Loves Raymond. He was in Catch Me If You Can. He was
Pulp Fiction. He was in Pulp Fiction.
He had 2 roles in Pulp Fiction. He was the guy who owned the coffee shop, and he was also one of the sportscasters, which I think is probably a thing. He's one of the cops that was shot in Reservoir Dogs. He was in For Keeps, The Sleeping Car.
Which of Fred's movies besides this one?
I'm seeing Air Rage is the main one I'm seeing on here. Whether he's on any more, I'm sure he's on more than this. So maybe he's got a third name. Maybe he's like the Ashlyn Gear of this thing, because she's been in stuff as Kim Pat and Kim Cammy and all that stuff.
Maybe sometimes goes by Ruth Bob.
Yeah. Oh, the Escort. The Escort, was that a Fred movie? No. Oh no, it was a great Gary Graver film. Sorry.
But he's actually been in a number of them. Ray actually mentioned off a couple of them. He was in Mob Boss.
Yeah.
He was in Mob
that
Boss.
Must be it.
And he actually was also in a couple other Fred Olen Ray films. He rattled off a couple other titles as well, but I just remember I saw the guy because I love him. Whenever I see him, he's always in smaller roles, but whenever I see him, I just love him, and I love him as the constantly eating cop.
Yeah. Oh, that part with the hand. Holy crap. That's so good, because you hear, oh man, what does he say, the producer say? He doesn't even give a shit.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit.
There's been a murder on the set. That's no excuse, and that's funny because Russ Meyer, with the many stories about that guy, he wouldn't care if someone broke their arm or whatever. What the hell does that got to do with this scene? I can remember there was one story I can't remember, some actor said about Russ. He was like. He couldn't get the emotion, so Russ Meyer just punched him in the stomach, and then he cried, and he's like, "That was great."
Nice. So,
one other thing, just one more about that guy,
sure.
is that the one thing that I thought was funny. Yeah, the shtick is that he's always eating a sandwich, and sometimes with his mouth full, but the sandwich never went down.
No.
you got the feeling that it was always a different sandwich, but it always looked the same sandwich. That it never got like a ton of bites out of it. It was always the same damn sandwich, on set, offset, whatever. It was always the exact same. I liked that bit about it. But.
They did that in an episode of Louie with Charles Grodin playing a doctor. He was eating a sandwich and it never seemed to. He was just constantly chewing with the sandwich. You're like, when is he gonna finish this sandwich?
So Bad Girls from Mars, definitely an interesting film. Meta before Meta was cool. This was before Scream. Before you had those films that were trying, that were very evident, saying, "Hey, look at us, we're looking at ourselves." This one just is a lot of fun, and I agree. If you're surfing through Hulu and looking for something to watch, definitely stop on this because it's got all the things you want, and it's going to make you laugh, I think. Which is kind of a change from the next film that we're going to talk about today. One that credited as Roger Corman's last directed film, and we are looking at Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound from 1990. The ultimate weapon, which was meant to be safe for mankind, produces global side effects, including time slides and disappearances. The scientist behind the project and his car are zapped back to 1817 Switzerland, where he finds Dr. Victor Frankenstein and his contemporaries there. And we see what happens where the man from the future meets the literary geniuses from the past, as well as Frankenstein and his monster. Cole, Frankenstein Unbound. Your initial impressions with this film?
Well, first of all, today is the 80th anniversary of the release of Bride of Frankenstein in L.A., at least, which is worth mentioning. So I was up all night working on Bride of Frankenstein art for my site, Horror, shameless plug. But
Very cool.
It was interesting to step into this film just having been up all night thinking of Frankenstein. And the novel is one of the best books ever written. Not that this movie meant to be true to that, but it is. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the three great horror novels, probably next to Pet Sematary and Weave World by Clive Barker. I mean, it's one of the novels. It's almost like the perfect book, Frankenstein. And it was obvious the people behind this read that because they frame it appropriately with, a snowy tundra, which is how the book is bookended. And they have a fairly good grip on the events of the novel, although the lead character of this movie has read the novel, so he should know everything that happens in this movie, but he doesn't. Very odd. I mean, that's like it seems like they could have remedied that with one rewrite. But my first impression, I enjoyed this. Who am I to criticize Roger Corman? I aim to have half the career he's had. It's a fun movie. I really like the conceit of it. I love time travel movies, and I love Frankenstein mashups. I loved I, Frankenstein, for instance. I'm probably one of 9 people who would give that movie a 5-star review.
Wow.
I think, it was. I thought it highly entertaining because the thing with Frankenstein is that original book has never been done right as a film, and it never will be because it is so perfect. I mean, it's almost like trying to, remake Nightmare on Elm Street or something. You can't really do it. It's there. It's done, and it stands. It stands right as it is. And I enjoy spin-offs because all you can do is have fun with it. I mean, if you're going to put Frankenstein on film, I mean, the most serious approach to it was the Kenneth Branagh movie, which I despised. So these are the kind of movies I like. These are the kind of Frankenstein movies I like. I will say that once the girl is hung, this movie takes a wrong turn. Once that girl is hung, this movie should be in the depths of its climax. We should go from that to all the stuff with the monster and Victor Frankenstein and John Hurt, and that climax should be extended, and that should be the last half hour of the movie. None of that stuff with Mary Shelley works. None of her dialogue works. That sex scene is terrible. They go from a tone where he spends, I would say, 20 minutes to a half hour trying to save this girl, and then that's just like, okay, done. He's going, on a date with Mary Shelley, and apparently she knows what a car. I mean, she doesn't know what a car is, but she knows enough to call it a car. And her statement about free love, well, I mean, it's just so god awful. And then the movie kind of comes back around at the end with the climax where they actually light the monster right for the first time. I mean, it's not that the monster's makeup is terrible, it's that he is used so poorly. He's just like hanging out in the woods or something. They couldn't give him like a creepy shed or like an abandoned structure to hang. He's just like hanging out next to a tree.
He likes the woods. He likes the woods. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I guess. I dug the film. I just feel like, man, it just lost its footing. If it wanted to just be a rambunctious comedy, cool. But all that stuff with the girl was kind of compelling, and the lead character, you kind of got with him. It's yeah, don't let the girl die for sure, and then she dies, and it's kind of like back into strictly C-movie territory. But the ending does come back around. I liked the ending. I liked a lot of the effects, which are great, actually. I thought watching some of the effects and the idea was good. And Jon Hurt, I mean, he is such a good actor. If you want to know how good of an actor he is, watch a film called From the Hip.
Yeah.
I mean, that is he plays a supporting role in that movie. That is one of the creepiest frickin' things ever filmed. I mean, that performance is so creepy. And ditto, imagine somebody else in the role of Alien, in his role. The film falls apart if you have, even William Hurt or somebody else in that role. It doesn't work. So I enjoy watching him. I enjoyed seeing Bridget Fonda and Raul Julia and even Jason Patrick as Lord Byron. I thought that was pretty clever and cool. But yeah, it's a fun movie, but it's definitely not, a great movie.
Sure. Oh, what about you, Don? Anything to add with your impression with Frankenstein Unbound?
I too just saw it for the first time today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cole was pretty thorough.
He was.
But it's, I kept thinking it's kind of like some sort of bastard child of the classic Frankenstein mixed with the Time Machine mixed with Hammer without as much nudity and sex, and and then throwing in near seizure causing special effects towards the end.
It's okay.
For the most part, I liked the story. I liked where they went with it.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, with a lot of holes and needing a lot of improvement. But I love Roger Corman.
Yeah.
I love what he does. And this was just.
Did the cast surprise you, Don? Because it did for me with seeing who all was in this film. A
little. I was really surprised Jason Patrick was in this. I mean, wasn't this? I
right
thought
after Lost Boys.
Yeah. So this was at a time where he really wasn't doing much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think wasn't he about to do Rush at this point? I want to say.
That would have been.
Yeah.
He was at a point. I want to say that he was at a point where. Yeah, he was at a point where he was actually becoming kind of an indie darling rather than becoming like the big Hollywood star everybody expected him to be after Lost Boys. He was doing After Dark, My Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Which
that's a good movie, too. Holy
which got a lot of really big, great buzz at the time, and I think that the year after this he would do the movie Rush, which was supposed to be a much bigger deal than it turned out to be, and
he did Sleepers, and then they got him for Speed Cruise.
Well, that's like 5 years from that.
That was 5 years after,
yeah.
but yeah. But what about you, Andrew? Frankenstein Unbound?
I remembered it was a big deal when it was about to come out. Like that artwork with the eyeball with the stitches in it, like that was all over the place. It was like a big deal, and I didn't see it in a theater. I don't know if it didn't come to Atlanta or if I just missed it, but I definitely got it on video, and I remember I dug it, and I actually hadn't seen it since then. And when you put up the link, I watched it, and I was just like, it was shocking to me how. It's a story about a man out of time, but the movie itself seemed to be out of time. I think if Corman had done it in the 70s, we would be talking about it as more of a kind of a classic than it ended up being. Because the early 90s was about to be one of the shittiest times of horror movies, mainstream horror that I can remember. and God, just think about it though. If it had been in like Technicolor and like more blood and more nudity and some, you know what I'm saying, like a little bit more of a hammed up performances and stuff, it would be pretty rad.
If it had been a little more hammer.
Yeah, because there's so much about it that's kind of like that, and that's Corman's style. And I just feel like, I kept watching it going like, I'd like it. Like, I don't hate it. I don't have a problem with it. I thought the monster was scary looking. Like, what the hell was that? Like, his face like a bicycle seat. But, like, I did feel, I felt myself kind of wishing that Corman would have made it, a couple of decades earlier just because that style would have been, I don't know, I think it would have been more, the way he made it would have been more appropriate back then than for the time that he was making. You know what I mean?
Right. Definitely. Anything to add, Scott, to Frankenstein Unbound?
Lots, because, surprise. But yeah, lots, because, like, this is the time that I was really in, this is around the time when I was really starting to know the name Roger Corman. I had loved Roger Corman by that point for almost a decade, but I was really starting to know the name and looking up that, all these movies that I love were done by this same guy in one capacity or another, and finding out that he was doing this. And this is also around the same time that his autobiography came out, How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime. Excellent book.
But there's not much about this movie in it, though, because I checked back on that.
Not in that movie, no. And but on the time that the thing that I got information on this movie was from one was from Premiere Magazine, and I'm going on memory here, so you're gonna have to forgive me if I'm not 100% accurate.
Well, no, we're gonna hold you to every single bit of information. By God, no, go ahead.
There's a little bit about it in that awesome Corman coffee table book that was out. I flipped through that just to make. There was a little bit about it, but not much.
Well, what happened was that there was either a joke or a study done by somebody at like Universal where they told Roger Corman, they said, we actually did some figures and we figured out that if we released the movie Frankenstein today, but we called it Roger Corman's Frankenstein, it would actually make more money than if it would have just been that. And the idea of that, because the full title of this movie is not Frankenstein Unbound. The actual title of the movie is Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound. And it was because it was a big deal. 20th Century Fox seemed to take that comment or study to heart, and they offered Roger Corman a chance to do a low-budget horror film, but of course, it being 20th Century Fox, this low budget was a bigger budget than Corman ever worked with. At that point, I think Corman's biggest budget film that he had done, I want to say, was Battle Beyond the Stars, which he had produced. And that had like a budget of like $1.5 million, something like that, back in 1980. This had a budget of about $8 million. It is by far still the most expensive movie Corman ever directed. Might be the most expensive one he ever produced, even. Guessing it must be. And so they said, we're going to give you this stuff to do what you want. And he decided to adapt this novel by Brian Aldiss, who wrote this book, Frankenstein Unbound, which I read shortly after I saw the movie. And I can't remember much about the book except like it takes a little longer to get going, but other than that, it follows the book pretty damn close.
What's some other stuff that Brian Aldiss
Aldis
sounded
has
familiar
the
to me.
distinction of here are the people who are involved in the Brian Aldiss adaptations. It's Roger Corman, and then years later, Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick, because he wrote AI.
Oh, okay. I knew the name sounded familiar, but I wasn't sure.
He also wrote Brothers of the Head, which I have not seen, but I just find that funny. Roger Corman and then Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg. And he did this movie, and it was a big deal. And I remember the only time you heard any set reports was that the TV news show Prime Time Live did a segment on Roger Corman, and I found out they were going to do it. I made my parents say, no, I don't care what you're watching. We're turning to this because I'm taping this segment. I was 14 years old, like, oh my God, yeah, Roger Corman. And so I did, and it shows him on like the futuristic, dilapidated set from the conclusion of it, shooting some bits of Frankenstein Unbound, saying he's going back to directing. And he didn't really go back. He just did the one movie. They did this big, ambitious film. Was the biggest budget they had. They did a study saying that, if you give it this title, it's going to make money. Mm-hmm. And then I believe they released it to less than 50 theaters.
Oh man!
When it came out, because they didn't know what to do. Because they didn't know what to do with it. It never came to Minnesota where I was living. And then they said, well, we were wrong. It doesn't make money. Well, yeah, because you only released it to like 40-some screens. I like this movie a lot. I think, I loved it back then, and I revisited it now for the first time in like 2 decades, and it still holds up. If it has a problem, and it does have some problems, like Cole's right about it being a little rough about the transition and stuff, Corman's was always going shorter and shorter and shorter. His films are tight. There is no meat. There's no fat, rather. There's no fat on a Roger Corman film. They are tight. If anything, it's probably a little too tight. It's an 86-minute movie, I think. And honestly, if this thing was like 100 minutes, I think it would be a lot better. And I actually even liked the Mary Shelley bits because I like Bridget Fonda a lot. I thought she was giving like a very Hammer-esque performance.
Well, I love her as well.
Yeah, I love her up because I was like, what happened to Bridget Fonda?
Bridget Fonda is one of the coolest freaking actresses that was
retired,
working.
right? Like 02, 03, she was in some
know.
kind of car wreck and then just stopped making movies.
She's I just love her. I love her to death. If you're out there, Bridget.
She's married to somebody famous. Like I don't know, Danny Elfman, right?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know.
No. Well, no, I don't think she's married to Danny Elfman.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I like, I think a lot of the people did the movie because I think they honest to God respected Roger Corman. Well, despite his reputation for low-budget things, I think John Hurt probably grew up watching Roger Corman. Raul Julia, who this was just before Addams Family, he was already a very well-respected actor, respected Roger Corman. Jason Patrick, the late Michael Hutchins is also in there as Percy Shelley. Yeah, I mean, I think that all these people were they were really into what he was doing, and you can see a lot of what he was doing. He gave kind of a sci-fi bit, but there's parts that really recall kind of the Poe cycle from Corman, especially the dream sequences.
Oh God, the dream sequences.
The dream sequences, that whole ripple effect is right out of Tales of Terror, man. That's right out of Tales of Terror.
I've got to completely agree with everyone. When I'm watching the film, I'm like, wow, he's channeling Hammer horror here. I mean, this is you're completely right. If this film was released, 20 years prior, it's probably received a whole lot differently than it is now. When it came out.
Because you could keep that story, just because the future or whatever.
Well, even the special effects, Don, the sci-fi in this doesn't even feel 90s, does it? It still feels like 70s, early 80s sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, very much so. That's why I was saying it's kind of Time Machine, Logan's Run kind of feel to the sci-fi and effects in it.
I did like how he's riding around in that car, just like brazenly, not even trying to hide it.
Yeah,
In Back to the
Yeah.
Future,
Funny-
didn't they at least stick it in a barn or something?
The
He's
great
like,
thing
"Hey,
is
check it
that
out."
he's very clandestine with it until he's taking Mary Shelley around. Then it's like, fucking him on a date.
He's
like,
hiding it.
townspeople are like, ah!
He's hiding it in a barn until he's got to take her out on a date. Then he takes her driving around, and they find a random pagoda to go make love in. I love that. They're just driving around, and all of a sudden, they just stop. And I understand it's a different time period, and it's France
when this
or
pagoda's
Sweden.
rocking, don't come and knock it.
That's how they threw down back then. He was like, "Hell, nobody knows who I am. Screw it."
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, literally. But I mean, they find a structure that just totally threw me. It's like they're driving out in the country, and then all of a sudden, oh no, there's a gazebo here, and then I'm like, wait, does that gazebo have a dresser? It's got pictures. There's a bed in this thing.
Roger, he tore the page out where they explained it.
Yep.
Now you're on schedule. Oh,
Now
wait.
you're on schedule.
No, it was made mention about the monster. I will say I really liked the different take on the Frankenstein monster. Andrew, what did you think of that different design? Because normally you got kind of the normal kind of
Well, I mean,
bolts in the neck and everything.
You can't
but
do like they won't let you do Jack Pierce's Frankenstein. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like that's a thing. That's like Monster Squad. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta. It's a big deal. Those are big. It's a big deal to try and redesign Frankenstein. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's a freaky Frankenstein. You
Mhm.
know?
That's a really good.
He's
designed.
just. I mean, he is scary, man. He doesn't suck. That's a scary makeup, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was scary. Well, and then it fit though. I liked how
His
they kept.
thumbs, right? The weird hands with the extra
thumbs.
thumb right on the bottom. I don't
Which,
know about
which
that.
kind of,
but-
which I couldn't quite understand. Maybe one of you could explain to me though. Why do you have to change the thumbs on his wife? She just had her chest ripped open. She didn't have anything happen to her hands.
Well, they didn't want to be different. They didn't want to fight about the thumb. Well, you got thumbs. Why don't you do this?
That was one thing, but at least they were consistent. It showed that Frankenstein was consistent in his people making because his bride had the similar thing where the blades went, the connectors were in their skull rather than in their neck.
Mm-hmm.
Which yeah, that is. It's a creepy monster, definitely.
No, if they're at a party, it's got to be clear whose woman that is. You don't want to piss him off.
Well, yeah,
I didn't know, man. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were Frankenstein.
Nick Brimble was so good in that role too. I mean, he was great. I mean, I didn't know who he was at the time. I wasn't watching BBC shows. About a year after this movie came out, he was Little John in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I thought, hey, that was the dude that was the Frankenstein monster, and but I thought he was really well done as the monster because what you usually see in these movies is you see either the dumb monster or the smart monster. You don't see a combination of the two.
yeah.
Somebody who can talk and reason, but he's still a brute, he's still a savage, and he still doesn't understand what's going on. That really isn't done that well in most of these Frankenstein-based movies. You usually get one or the other, and I think they actually managed to create a better dichotomy of both than most of the films of the era. With a monster, anyway.
Yep, I definitely agree. I really enjoyed the monster, and I just want to talk briefly, quick about Raul Julia's performance as Victor Frankenstein. The man, I give him total respect, especially for the type of film here he's in. He's a respected actor. He went all in with this performance, didn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah. He was into it.
I mean,
He did not. I don't feel like he chewed the scenery.
Mhm.
I think that he honestly would show a man that was right on the brink of madness. Right when you meet him, he's already done this great, horrible thing about creating the monster, and there's his nephew has already been killed. The girl is going to be hung. and you can see him slip further and further and further until at the end he unveils, what he plans to do to Elizabeth, and he says, "My God, you were insane!" And that's when he's really lost it.
Yeah.
He's really lost it, and I think that they did that great. Raul Julia gets so much attention because he was so fantastic in like the Addams Family, and then people like ha 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 because he was so cheesy in Street Fighter. But Raul Julia was a really respected, fantastic actor, and I think that he did this right as somebody who is like, I'm going to show somebody that is not insane, but is right at that tipping point. Right at that tipping point, and I really feel that he nailed it.
I felt so too. Don, what did you feel about Raul Julia? I mean, because of all the actors here, I know you have John Hurt, Bridget Fonda, J.C. Patrick, but Raul Julia, I mean, he shows up and it's like, wow.
Right.
How'd you feel about his performance?
I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Like Scott said, it was a man. He was a man on the brink of madness. He wasn't hysterical. He wasn't grieving. He portrayed somebody who was in the process of breaking and snapping in the calmest, coldest, most calculated way.
Mm-hmm. And even in the way he delivered a line, they worked the line in there, "She's alive," like Bride of Frankenstein, but he doesn't do it like you've seen it in the past, I think, to where it's just over ambitious. He says it like with pure joy. Mm-hmm. That she's alive, but not pure, she's alive. I mean, I loved how he played that scene. That whole character, you could tell he just, he didn't chew the scenes, but yet at the same time, he was really putting it all in. I'm not going to say John Hurt wasn't, but John Hurt just looked like he was having fun, didn't he? Cole, wouldn't you say John Hurt with his performance? He just looked like he was just amused by the whole thing.
Well, I think his character is set up like right away in the opening bit, that takes place in his time, whatever year that is, and which, by the way, is beautiful. You guys were talking about special effects earlier, and I think, man, those cloud effects were fantastic, I thought, for the time. Then again, there's something about a brooding storm that I like. I always have one in all my movies, lightning and thunder.
I liked it was kind of vagina-like,
Thank you. I was just going to say that.
It certainly was.
Given the themes of the movie,
I thought John Hurt was great because he had to, he maintained his character. There's consistency to his character. It didn't seem like he was tossing it off. He sets up his character right away. And I guess in a Close Encounters of the Third Kind sort of way, forgets about his children, very quickly. But that bugged me because it's a B movie. But there is a consistency to his character, and he maintains it, throughout up until, the girls hung and the movie just kind of. I don't know.
Well, those weren't his. I don't think those were his. I don't think those were his kids.
Oh, yeah, they weren't.
Those,
no. Because that got me the first time I'd seen the movie way back then. But if you listen, they say like, "Hey, there's the card alerts them says like you learn." It says, "No, it's neighborhood children." I think that he's one of those people where it's totally cool if they just kind of cross his property. Like, yeah, I'm cool with the kids, and everybody knows I'm not a pervert, so they're okay with it too. So
no, that's actually accurate. I apologize. I've only seen this once, which I
you're going to miss stuff. I'm
well, but he still doesn't seem to care about the girl that died for very long after.
No, he doesn't.
No,
he makes it with Mary Shelley because
and Cole was correct, totally correct on that. And it's like I said, there's Corman always goes tighter and tighter and tighter, and you're never going to be bored in a Corman movie.
But, no, I wasn't. This is an exciting movie.
But it would actually help if he let it out just a little bit, to give the characters a time to process. Yeah. I can see that definitely.
Yeah, man. No, I like John Hurt in this movie. Just to bring it back around, I thought he was good. I thought everybody was good in the movie. I think that the whole thing was just kind of, slaughtered by its own third act. But I thought he was really good, man. I can't imagine anybody else doing it, you know?
Yeah, I guess that was supposed to be his character where he was kind of amused by this whole thing in history, though he's not much of a scientist in that, affecting history. We just we just tossed that shit out the window, man. I'm gonna drive my car around because I'm getting a date with Mary Shelley, man. We're gonna drive a silver beast around and scare the peasants. But
at least he wasn't like like gloating and yelling and beeping like pimpin' beep beep pimpin' beep beep.
I did like how they handled the fashion. Now it was supposed to be set in Switzerland, but there were a lot of French in the area. But I think the time period that they had it in, with the whole art angle of it, I think that's why he was so accepted a lot more readily by some of the characters than say we've normally seen because of the time. But history's not my strong point. But it was just it's that artsy group where they're like, yeah, okay, it's a car that moves on its own. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's cool, man. Groovy. Did it kind of surprise you that people weren't exactly more shocked by Mr. Future Man? Anyone?
Well, he was wise. He was wise to not just show his stuff off to any podunk local. Otherwise, he would have been burned at the stake as a witch.
Yeah.
But he shows it to Mary Shelley. He shows it to Lord Byron and Percy Shelley. It's really important to know how. I mean, that trio of people were actually seen as very decadent, and there were rumors about them and stuff about occultic stuff because they were so progressive. Mm-hmm. They were so much into scientific endeavors, and they were they had these drugs and drugs and sex and they were very much futurists. They had these great big visions of the future, although they couldn't say. So when they see this, I think they're a little bit awed by it. They're awed by it, but they're not ready to just be like, sorcerer! Like I think every other local would have been at the time. I mean, he's lucky John Hurt's really damn lucky to have gotten out of there. Yeah. Even though he ends up in a really bad place, he's lucky that he's so lucky that he was not seized by the local.
Yeah, they just tossed him into the river.
Yeah, they just kind of thought like, oh, he's some kind of crazy drunk. Let's just toss him in there.
I did like the very end of this film. I want to talk about the very end of this film because, here we have this whole film and it's kind of taking place in the past, and he's helping Victor because, it's also going to serve his own purpose. But the way the whole ending sequence I thought was really well done and not expected to end it like it did with them transporting into the very, very far future. Did that surprise anyone? The ending of where they took it.
Well, I thought that was really cool because again they bookended it like Mary Shelley's novel, which was appropriate, and it gives the fans a little tip of the hat that's appreciated, but also that's a bonus sequence that didn't happen either. That whole scene with the monster chasing John Hurt around that elaborate set. I mean, that doesn't have to be there. The filmmakers didn't have to do that. They could have ended it sooner. I mean, and they didn't. And I appreciated that. And the monster looked great, I thought, under those lights. I mean, I can imagine, strobe lighting isn't everybody's thing. But I remember my stepmother vomiting on the way out of the theater after seeing The Crow, literally just vomiting from the strobe lighting. But I really thought I like this ending, and I like the very last shot, and the voiceover's a little cheesy. Feels like they threw it in maybe for sequel potential or something, but Yeah, I liked.
Or to explain the title to like that audience, like so you can just see like some guy at Fox like nobody
Yeah.
in the audience is gonna understand that. Like, you can just see them saying it.
No, but I dug the ending for sure. It brought the film back for me to the point where I'd recommend it. Definitely.
What about you, Don? What are your thoughts on the ending of Frankenstein Unbound? Did you like it? Did you wish they kind of take a different direction, or?
I did. The whole special effects part in the sequence in that underground bunker, whatever, did pull me out a little bit because the seizure inducing strobe effects, and then the clapper.
Yeah.
I thought that same thing. Yeah.
It pulled me out a little bit because it was too funny. But getting past that and go, I was able to get past that and re-embrace the seriousness of what was going on. And I did enjoy it, but damn, I felt bad that pulled me out to begin with. But it's you've got strobe lights and the clapper to control your lasers.
Again, if the film had been made 20 years earlier before the clapper, that wouldn't have been as funny as it was. But that was my exact thought too. Was, oh my God, he installed the clapper on these lasers. That's amazing. Andrew, what about you? The final act, the final scenes of this film, and your thoughts on Frankenstein Unbound?
I thought it was cool. There's obviously a lot of money spent. To be honest with you, man, I wanted him to blow up. When all the lasers were on him and he kept getting fried and fried, I was like, blow up, blow up, blow up. He didn't blow up. I'm like, man, that would have been rad if he'd have blown up. I mean, I don't think anybody here would say he shouldn't have blown up, right? He should have blown up.
He should have blown up.
He should have blown up.
Yeah, it should have been a nice explosion of body parts and fried.
Yeah, just like
skin,
Hellraiser style. Just it just seemed like that going there, and then it didn't go there. I'm like, I thought he had a lot of money. What the fuck? He didn't blow up.
Cut back on a strobe light and put it in for the blowing up of the Frankenstein monster.
I know, man. I mean, it could have been like a pig at a Pink Floyd concert.
Nice.
Oh man, I love you guys. Scott, what about you? Final ending of Frankenstein Unbound. How'd you feel about it in the film in general?
Well, let me just really quick, also do some corrections for earlier.
Sure.
I had read earlier that the budget was $8 million, which I still think it might be. According to Wikipedia, it was actually 11.5.
Estimated, so it could be anything.
That could be with marketing. It could be with marketing. It could be with marketing, and it could be with Roger Corman's salary, which was reportedly $1 million, which could have financed 3 of his other movies at the time. Yeah, that's great. And also that Bridget Fonda, is married to Danny Elfman. I checked that while we were doing
really?
it. Since 2003. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And for real, she's not been in any movies, right? She got in that wreck and she wasn't in any more movies.
It doesn't mention why, but yeah.
Yeah, I think she got in a bad car. Like, I don't think she paralyzed or, deformed.
No, she was in an accident. It mentions the accident, but it didn't mention if that was the reason why she has kind of not quite gone as crazy, whereas, everybody thought she was going to be in everything.
Would you think
after
maybe
Jackie
that
Brown.
she just wasn't Fonda acting anymore?
Oh,
God. If only I could slap you through the monitor.
He went there. But
anyway,
there.
The
that was a better joke than you made it seem like.
Lord.
Keep telling yourself that, buddy. The ending was really well done, and I like exactly what Cole said, is that opening and closing in the tundra and everything, even though this one's like a far future and everything, really does bookend it in the same manner that the original Mary Shelley novel did, where they meet the captain of that ship, who's just as driven as Frankenstein was. It's really interesting because it leaves so first of all, it shows you this horrible dystopian thing, and I don't think there's any I don't think that there's any doubt whatsoever that he is responsible
Yeah.
for everything that you see. It leaves the possibility for, well, you think now, is he going to go and tip over into madness like Dr. Frankenstein did, or is he going to try to find a solution, or what is he going to discover? It gives you all this. It really leaves you with a big question mark, but it's a really great eerie question mark that honestly was not unlike a lot of the older films that Corman was directing in the 50s. If you look at, say, Day the World Ended,
Mm-hmm.
or Teenage Caveman even, they end on these notes of, whoa, really? So now what? And I think it was kind of doing that. We got everything. We got them all ported into the future. We got, all the other characters were like taken care of. Elizabeth's gone, Raul Julia's gone, Dr. Frankenstein's gone, and it's just him versus the monster in a design of his own creation. And you get the big battle. He's beating him with the freaking arm and everything.
And the clapper.
And the clapper, and then you get the big mysterious, like, oh wow, where you think, yeah, you're at the end of the movie and you're not going to see anything else in the movie, but you're also like, your mind is kind of reeling as to imagining what's next.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, because he's headed into that big supposed last safe haven for humans, and you're like,
it's Tomorrowland. He went to
Tomorrowland.
It's a big city. We don't know how occupied that city is. Maybe he gets there and there's nobody there. Or
Clooney's in there.
George Clooney.
George Clooney's in there. Thank God. George Clooney. He's gonna be here forever. Yeah, George.
Yes, he is.
He does the clapper and he makes him a hot pocket.
Because of your crimes against humanity, you're going to be watching Return of the Killer Tomatoes over and over and over again.
Right along with Batman and Robin. But let's not go there. Let's tie things up here as we always do at a spoiler room. I think we had a great discussion tonight on these two films. Thank you so much, folks. And let's take this time now to pimp your stuff, as we would say. So, Cole, where on Facebook can they find your group with your fantastic artwork?
Well, they can find me on Horror Roar, which is where I put most of my art currently, or on Shadows and Shadows and Lovers Productions, which is my my page, which will have all the info about the upcoming movie very soon, as there's a rough cut and some promotional materials ready to go. Also, feel free, if you want to talk about movies, to just look me up as Cole Meredith, Meredith, and I'm always ready to talk movies, man. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Oh, it's been a blast, man. And Dawn, go ahead, my dear.
You can find me in theaudience.net.
Yes,
That's
some
all
great,
I've got.
That's all you need. You got great reviews there. So definitely check out intheaudience.net. And Mr. Gonzorific himself, go ahead, sir. Where can they find you?
Well, hi, everybody. Hey,
Hi.
Been a pleasure to talk to you this evening. My movies are on Amazon On Demand, very cheap rental. They're more on the Bad Girls from Mars side than they are on the Frankenstein Unbound side for sure. The titles I have currently available for rental are Mondo Gonzo, Pajama Nightmare, Fake Blood, and the Underground Cinema with an S. That's the newest one. You're going to have a good time, and if you don't, oh, God. I hope you find what you're looking for in life.
Nice. And Scott, sir.
You can find all the stuff I'm on, all the podcasts, all the writing I do, everything at movieocrity.com. I also have a web series out there if you want to look up all the old episodes. The best place to look all the old episodes up is on Vimeo.com. It's vimeo.com/movieocrity. I'm on YouTube as well, but you know what? They've already taken down a couple of my episodes, so screw it.
No.
Why?
Yeah. So screw you.
What?
They took. Well, I got one.
Inappropriate content and
I had-
copyright.
Yeah,
probably.
both. I had
Yeah.
one taken
There's
down.
a channel of someone that bakes a birthday cake and sits in it. Why won't they let you?
Yeah. No, well,
A friend told me that is. I didn't actually.
The thing is that you can show. Well, yeah, you can show. The most violent clip. I think you were even mentioning recently, Andrew, on another one of your shows. You can show like the most just randomized, out of context, violent footage ever. Like in a thing, I had the mistake of showing two topless girls kissing.
Way to go.
What you need to do
on
is
a video that was already flagged for over 18 only and everything else, but they took that down. I had another one like challenged me on copyright, even though I was okay on fair use. Anyway, it's not a great session for me, but yeah, YouTube sucks. Vimeo rules. Look me up on Vimeo.
to bake a cake, sit in it, and say movie reviews. That's
This is what I think of your movie. Actually, you know what? I could have done that and saved myself 1,800 words writing on Paul. This is my opinion of Paul Blart too. Get a candle in there.
Paul Blart. Blood fart.
Well, thank you so much, folks. You can find all links to all these fine folks' stuff at specialmarkproductions.com, where you can find the archive of Spoiler Room episodes, as well as on iTunes, where you can find us. Please comment, like us, rate us, tell your friends, have your friends tell their friends. Come on over and listen to us talk about films here on the Spoiler Room. Make sure you check out the Fred Olen Ray interview I got a chance to do. Make sure you tune in. Also, coming next week, we will have an interview with the director and possibly some of the cast of We Get a Squeak from Dawn, as we will be talking to the director and hopefully some of the cast of the Ninja Versus series. That's right. The gentleman behind Ninja Versus Monsters, Ninjas Versus Zombies, Ninjas Versus Vampires, not in that order, but they will be talking with us. So stay tuned, check out our old episodes, our new episodes, everything in between, because here on the Spoiler Room, the conversation is fresh, but the movies are definitely spoiled.